Welcome to the Outlaw Radio Show. My name is Zach Adams. I am the luckiest guy in the world to be married to Jessica Adams. I'm the proud papa of 3 beautiful kids, Quincy, Theo, and Mabel. And I had the greatest job in the world. I get to pastor Calvary 316, a non-denominational church located just outside of Athens, Georgia. If you're local, come hang out with us one Sunday morning. Our service is at 10:30. If you're not local, you don't live in Georgia, but you're looking for a Bible teaching church that you can attend online. Again, our service is at 10:30. The quick link to our YouTube channel is calvary316.live. You can learn all about the church by checking out calvary316.com. I am joined in studio by the man that needs no introduction, the maestro of this dysfunction, Mr. Creighton Vaughn. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you. Good to see all you out there.
Yes, I got some sun today.
You are quite red.
I did. No, I really didn't. I went and was invited to play golf today, which was great. It was a beautiful day to go play golf. And I get to, check that under the ministry box. So a brother Randy wanted to play golf and I obliged. And it was a beautiful day. It was one of those days in February. It's not going to last. We still have some cold coming.
I am fighting the it's not going to last thing.
It's not, but you got to enjoy it. Today, the day the Lord has made, rejoice and be glad in it. But it's like, man, I got some sun. I intentionally did not wear a hat because I didn't want the two-tone line.
Worked out well.
It did not work out as I planned. We're also joined in studio by 2 regulars. We've got Vinny Himes and Spice Daddy. Spice Daddy 316 is your X account. Vinny Himes,
that's right. Put it up,
X
Creighton.
account. Yeah, Creighton can put that up.
Put it up.
How are you guys doing? How was your day?
Fantastic. Normal.
Yeah. Just normal day? Good day? The day the Lord has made. Did you guys rejoice? Were you glad in it?
Very.
Absolutely. So I want to start off. We're going to talk about a very interesting topic. We're going to talk about Babylon the Great. What is Babylon the Great? This idea of the spirit of Babylon that kind of weaves its way all throughout Scripture, culminating with the fall of Babylon in the book of Revelation. We're going to talk about all that. But before we get to it, I want to kind of begin by, we're going to do something a little different. So I'm currently teaching a series through the histories. Harmony of the Histories is the series title. All of the Bible studies, they're on our website, again, calvary316.com.
It's good. You show up for church one Sunday.
It was, yeah. No, I think, listen,
talking to you.
My pace has been pretty good.
Can't
I feel
really
good.
see me, but I'm talking to you.
Your pace has been way better than I was expecting when I first heard that we were going through First Samuel.
Yes.
I was expecting, half a chapter a week.
We would be there for years.
No, you've been doing good.
Yeah. I mean, we're in chapter 14.
And not just good, but it's you're leaving enough hanging at the end
to bring you back.
To bring you back for the next chapter.
Yeah, Sunday was rude. I wanted to stand up and be like, next book. Keep going.
No, we did leave on a cliffhanger last Sunday. But the whole idea behind the series, Harmony of the Histories, is that 1st and 2nd Samuel were originally titled 1st and 2nd Kings. 1st and 2nd Kings was 3rd and 4th Kings. Those 4 books are the history of that period, beginning with really the end of Judges, the Samuel, through the fall of Judah. So really from the beginning of the period of the end of the Judges, beginning of the prophets, all the way to the complete destruction, exiling of the Hebrew people under the hand of Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian Empire. Covers that period of history. Those 4 books were written as the children of Israel were leaving, as they were leaving. You didn't hit the record button, did you? That's all right. We're good. That's why we have redundancies. You try to be real slick with it. So these 4 books were written while the children of Israel were in exile to explain how they got to this point, how they had gotten to this place. And then 1st and 2nd Chronicles, I'm of the opinion, was written by Ezra, and it was for a post-exile people that were returning to the land that needed to be reminded of some aspects of their history, but both compilations are thematic. They're written with an intent. One to explain how we've gotten into this mess, and one to explain that, hey, we've done stupid things before, but God's grace is sufficient. And so what we're doing with the series, and it's really not applicable till we get to 2 Samuel, but we will be harmonizing the parts of 1st and 2nd Chronicles that's covered in 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. If you've ever read through the Bible, you'll go through those books, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings, and then you get to Chronicles, and you're like, wait a second, like, I thought I read this before. And because it is a repeating of the history, but from God's perspective. So we're doing this fun thing. We're in the Old Testament. We're looking at a period of history that our church has not really been in before. We teach through books of the Bible. We've been Old Testament, New Testament, back and forth, beginning to end. But this is a fresh time to be in this section. And so I've been really deep in not just my study of Samuel and now Saul, but I've already done a bunch of advanced studying about David, about King David. So the second half, beginning, I think it's in chapter 16 of 1 Samuel, you get the second half of 1 Samuel is like that transitional period where Saul, the kingdom has been taken from Saul, although he's still king. David has been anointed, but he's not yet king. And then that all ends the book with Saul dying, David becoming king. So I've been doing some studying. I need to recommend this book. Put this up. This is written by Mark Rutland. It's called David the Great, and it is just a biographical study of David's life from beginning to end, kind of a chronological look. But this is, again, a wonderful read about the life of David. And what I enjoy about this book is that it's brutal. Like it's honest, it's real. I think sometimes we, when we think of David, we romanticize him a bit. We'll acknowledge he committed adultery and had Bathsheba's husband murdered, and he, did a little of this. His family was dysfunctional, but like we kind of whitewash David a little bit. This book is brutal. I mean, it's the presentation of his life, and terrible guy. I mean, really, David is such a complicated character. Commits adultery, commits murder. He's that guy. But then he's also the guy that in response writes the Psalm of Repentance, Psalms 51. So he's like this very complex. He is. Here's another kind of the dichotomy of him. He's a warrior. Like he's not allowed to build the temple because of the blood on his hands. Like was brutal. Like
I put him more like a mob boss than a warrior.
Totally, but he was a warrior.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't just like, I'm going to send people to whack you. David would whack you. Like David had no problem shedding blood.
Say hello to my little friend.
Yes, no. He really was that.
Let me figure out how to say that in Hebrew.
But then on the flip side, like interestingly, so he's the warrior, but then he's also a musician. Like he's as a shepherd boy, he's whacking the bear, he's whacking the lion with a sling, but he's also got the harp, and he's like the most accomplished musician of all of Israel. So like they need somebody to play for the king, and it's David. Like he's just a very fascinating person. Now, I've been really deep into David. The church, we're about to get there. Again, we're in chapter 14 this Sunday, looking at kind of the beginning of Saul's decline. We're a week or two away from being introduced to David. The seeds have already been sown where Samuel tells Saul that God's looking for a man after his own heart. That the little foreshadowing of what's to come. But so our church is kind of in this, which is a lot of fun. I've been deep into this, which has been a blast. I say all that to say that tomorrow night, tomorrow's the 27th, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The 27th, there is a new show that's being released on Amazon Prime. And the show is titled A House of David. And I've been seeing previews for it. I've been seeing some pastors that I respect online promoting it. Most notably would be Greg Laurie, who's the pastor of Harvest in Riverside, California. If you've heard the name Greg Laurie, it's because his life was kind of presented as a biopic called Jesus Revolution. Also kind of told the early story of Pastor Chuck and Calvary Chapel. The guy that produced Jesus Revolution is also producing House of David. So there's a couple companies involved. Creighton, I gave you a few names. The guy's name is
John Irwin.
John Irwin. And he's done actually several things. So he did Jesus Revolution, which was well written, well produced, the cinematography was good. It wasn't like your old school cheesy Christian movies, like
which I love,
which Justin is a huge fan of. But like Christian cinema or like Christian themed cinema has gotten
historically been terrible.
Well, yes and no. Like I would say probably no. Like if you go back to Charlton Heston, Ben-Hur won awards.
It's like my favorite movie.
Moses.
I didn't know that you would count Ben-Hur or Moses in that. I was thinking
that's when Christian films were done right.
Right. I was thinking more like, and don't crucify me for this, but God's Not Dead, the Left Behind movies.
Don't you throw that name in there.
Like Kirk Cameron.
No.
I'm like, that's
the
just
latest
not...
one with
Creighton,
Kevin
we are
Sorbo was
100%
great.
in
I have not
agreement.
seen the one with Hercules. I'm so sorry.
So Justin is a
Super cheesy B grade film fan.
Yes.
absolutely yes. No. Like he is the Christian male equivalent of your 6-year-old Hallmark Christmas movie lady.
No. I
He
like
is the 6-year-old Hallmark Christmas
He's also
movie.
that lady too because he watches all those.
No, I do love Christmas movies, but not the Hallmark ones. No, I view it more like what's Mystery Science Theater 3000. Yeah, I view myself in that light with these Christian
So
movies.
do you sit there and like just you know what you want to do some shorts?
Yeah.
Him heckling Christian
Just-
movies.
I 100% do.
Yes, and like a total silhouette. We'll give him like
Yeah.
some space alien
yes.
thing.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Anyway,
it's a great idea.
Well, what happened really? I mean, so like there was an appeal to Christian themed movies, mainstream, major production. Again, Charlton Heston, Ben-Hur, Moses, the Exodus. But as American society got more progressive, they abandoned a huge market. They quit putting money behind movies that would have a large appeal. And then I would say like the next kind of the game-changing movie was when Mel Gibson did The Passion of the Christ. Because he put all of his money behind it and was like, you guys are crazy for, like, nobody wanted to do this movie. He's like, you don't understand, like, there's so many people worldwide that would love this, it be well done. And he made hundreds and hundreds of millions. It's one of the highest grossing movies of all time. And then you saw like mainstream media, like the production agencies, like, oh, we got to get in on this game. And they didn't know what the sauce was. Like they did the Noah, which was garbage.
Terrible.
They did another Moses movie, was garbage. They didn't realize like what the real appeal was. Like people want biblical stories. Like don't mess with the story, give it to me. And then still you got like all these cheesy movies because there's no money behind them. They're low budget, poorly written, poorly acted. It is what it is. But there have been like The Chosen. So The Chosen, they were able to do what they did because what do you call it? Crowdsourced it. They raised the money from the potential audience. Like, hey, this is what we want to do. This is what we want it to be like. But we need the money to do it well. And they raised the money, which is a really interesting way to do it. And they were able to gain a huge audience, make a lot of money as a result of it. And now you've seen, so this guy, again, what was his name? John Irwin. So he also did, and I haven't seen it, I'm pretty sure you have, but the I Can Only Imagine movie.
Yeah, that was a good
And I
movie.
heard it was very well done too.
Yeah.
He did that one as well. So my point is House of David, as far as I can understand, what they're hoping for is that it's going to be a series. Like it's going to be a TV show series, I guess by 8 to 10 episodes, a season, multiple seasons throughout the life of this historical character, David.
I just hope they don't gloss over anything.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. So there's a lot of potential for this. When I saw that it was Amazon Prime, I was like, oh no, this is not good because, again, without Christians involved, like they don't get it. Like I was excited that Amazon had purchased Lord of the Rings. Like, oh, we're going to do Lord of the Rings instead of 3 movies. We're going to get like,
6 seasons,
6 or 7 seasons. This is going to be great. And what did they do? They completely abandoned the canon of what it's supposed to be. And you're like, you ruined it. I know there's some show. I mean, Amazon doesn't just do that to Christian shows. There's other books that they've completely butchered.
They did it to the Wheel of Time, and I will never forgive them.
Right. So when you see Amazon Prime's doing
very
it,
strongly, Vinny. I feel very strongly.
I don't even know what the Wheel of Time is.
you
It's the
see,
best American. It doesn't matter. Okay.
it doesn't
It's
matter.
a book written for teenage boys or girls.
It's
I haven't figured
15
that one out
books written for teenage boys, and they're so good.
I was working then, so I
Yeah,
missed that
it's kind of like the Twilight for Creighton.
It is not anything like Twilight. It's actually good.
It's
Oh,
the Twilight. It's the
modern
Twilight for
Nothing
Creighton.
like Twilight.
that is fantastic.
My goodness.
Well, you gotta-
Wheel of Time is so good.
You got to
What
realize
vampire would you be? Would you be the one of the ones that glitter?
Absolutely not. Also, be a vampire because vampires are gay.
he'd be a werewolf.
Werewolf. Okay.
I got the hair for it.
Is that are werewolves like Mandalorians?
Kind of.
no.
okay.
Don't even get
Anyway.
me started on Mandos.
Listen, Wheel of Time, Vinny, has a huge Italian following.
Oh, that
Yes,
that checks.
it was just a huge. There's a
Got
huge,
it.
like Black Italian.
Yeah,
fan club.
it's really
move. Yeah,
Black Italians are big into it.
are
All
really big into
four
it.
of us.
Yes.
that's not
all
true.
4 of us.
there are dozens of them.
That's not true. I know 3 of us, and I'm the only one.
Yes. So anyway, so House of David premieres tomorrow. There's a lot of things to be excited about. The trailer looks great. There's some credible people doing it that have a track record. There are respectable Bible people. Like, what was it? Netflix did the Mary thing. When we've talked about that on a previous episode, that was
Terrible.
hot garbage. And when you look at like who they had advising, oh great, this is a Joel Osteen production.
I mean, they didn't even use the Bible as their main source. They used the proto-evangelium of James or whatever.
Terrible.
Yeah.
So my point is there is a lot of anticipation, excitement, hope that this could be really good. So what we're going to do, and we've never done this with the Outlaw Radio Show before, but for the next several weeks, however long the show goes, we're going to open each episode with doing kind of a recap, synopsis, and then review of the previous week's episode. We won't take long, be 5, maybe 10 minutes at the most. I think there's some great perspectives so Creighton's going to kind of look at it. His angle is going to be like real Bible based. Like, what did they get right? What did they get wrong from a biblical angle? Spice Daddy's going to bring his background of archaeology, the time period. Like, are they doing this right? What did they do wrong? So that's going to be Spice's perspective. Vinny's going to bring the perspective of a dad of teenagers. Like, hey, I'm going to watch this with my girls. You know, how it resonates, and then I'll bring in kind of the perspective also of just a father watching it. I'm going to bring a pastoral perspective, but also just, hey, I've got a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And so I'll let you guys know, hey, this episode was great for all 3 of them, or hey, this might have been a little dark. Like, I wish I had gotten some of this with The Chosen. So there was some episodes where, did I tell you the story of John the Baptist? So we were watching
Herod.
Okay, so this last season opens with the death of John the Baptist. And so we're sitting on the couch. So Quincy's on his own couch. I'm sitting there. Mabel's right next to me. And then there's Theodore and Jessica, or Jessica and then Theodore, something like that. And so like John he's imprisoned, and they're, Herodias does the dance and gets Herod to, Val, like, I'll give you anything you want. She's like, oh, I want the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And at some point in all of this, Mabel, like, Dad, can you pause it? And so this is my 6-year-old. And so I pause it, and she kind of looks up at me and she goes, what's going to happen to John? And like, I'm sitting there thinking, man, I don't exactly know. I haven't watched the episode yet, so I don't know what's about to happen. I know what happens, but I don't know how they're going to present it exactly. And before I could say anything, Theodore leans over, my 10-year-old, and he goes, May, they're going to cut his head off. And Jessica's on the other side of the couch like, and Mabel's eyes are like as big as saucers. And I'm like, honey, like he's gonna die for Jesus. He's gonna go be with Jesus. Let's just get back to the show. So I hit play. So we're watching it, and I'm kind of like looking down at her, and she's like, she's doing this thing, like she's like, so I finally pause it again, and I'm like, May, are you okay? And she goes, how are they going to cut his head off when there's like a bone here? Like she's like trying to figure out like what like that looks like. And what, I mean, at that point we're already deep. So I go, well, they'll cut his head off above the bone because there's not much here. And she's like, and then, you know, they get to the end and it's like pretty dramatic. They have his head down. The sword goes back, you know, it's intense.
That's
I wish I had known beforehand, because I would have been like, hey, you know, this, like, we're going to skip this episode. Like the very first season we watched, season 1, episode 1, had a lot of demon possession with Mary Magdalene. Like Jesus is only introduced at like the very end of the episode. Jess and I happened to watch that in advance and decided, you know what? We can skip this episode altogether. Like we don't even need to watch this episode, because you get to the second episode and Jesus is like, you're not missing anything. So we skipped it. So what we're going to kind of do is in our reviews, we're going to try to help you guys out as parents, as to, you know, just maybe what's appropriate, what isn't. I also think what's great about these type of things, and we've experienced this with The Chosen, is that there's a lot of things about The Chosen I love. There's a lot of things I don't. But we've kind of, as a family, leaned into that because we get done with an episode and we talk about it. Like we talk to the kids about like, hey, well, what was biblical and what was more like a creative license and what was like actually to the text. And we'll talk. And it's wonderful conversation to have with your kids. Like, again, I wish they would stick more to the biblical story often. But again, it's well done and it's done well enough that you can really, borrow a phrase, you can eat the meat, spit out the bones, and you can use it as a tool to have great conversations with your kids around the dinner table, which is what we've been doing.
All I know is if Goliath is not at least 9 feet tall, I'm done with that show.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah,
that's my defining line with
I'll be upset if they're not Jewish.
Because I've watched other David and Goliath movies, and they just had a slightly larger man than David, and I was like, that is not in the least bit biblical, nor is it impressive.
So you want somebody that's built like the mountain from
Game of Thrones. Yes.
Yeah,
I remember his real name.
Bigger than that, because
he's talking about the god from 300.
Yeah, like Goliath.
Oh, as big as Xerxes in 300.
Yes.
I believe Goliath is described at least as being at least 9 to 10 feet tall.
Yes, I'm aware.
And if it's not at least that,
you're gonna feel cheated.
I am.
Yeah, Xerxes in 300 is like 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things again that we'll be looking at. You know, just what's accurate, what is.
I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
The reviews are going to be lit.
They will be. I do think,
as the father of teenage daughters, I had to say that
for sure. Well, that's what you're going to bring to that's what you're bringing to it. They
don't use the word lit anymore.
Yeah,
how would you know? How many teenage girls do you interact with?
Quite a bit actually at my job. Okay.
He has a teenage sister.
Yeah, I have sisters.
Oh, you do. I always forget that. You're 90 years old. I always forget you have teenage sisters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of Holcombs in this world.
A lot of Holcombs.
There are.
So, to me, I will say, what I will be looking for, because I've said for years, like I would love to see like an HBO quality presentation, like make it rated R because it's rated R, of the life of David, or like do the period of the judges. Like there's some really deep, fun, cool stuff that you could just don't mess with the storyline, and then also don't whitewash it. Don't whitewash David's character. Like when he's wicked, make him wicked. Make it complicated. Don't try to like Christianese it. make it palatable. Like if you present the text, it will be complicated, it will be controversial, but it'll be accurate. And I think that that's what the Bible's attempting to accomplish. Dave's a complicated person.
Wait, you're telling me that the Bible is not full of rainbows and unicorns?
There are unicorns, but I'm not going to, and there are rainbows. Yes,
there are,
but this is not full of it.
But I'm not getting the magical experience that's been promised to me since Sunday school stories.
Yeah, that was the wrong Sunday school.
Yeah.
Different Bible.
Yeah, I will say I want to. You brought that up, and this is something totally off the top of my head that I want to say, and then we'll get to our topic. So we're changing next week. We'll do this. So I was we were at a baseball game this weekend, and I was sitting there with my mom, and no, this is a great. I'm so glad that this was brought to my attention. She turned to me just randomly, and she goes, "Hey, you remember Peter Pokrant? He passed away. We just got word he passed away." And I was like, oh my goodness gracious. So you guys would never, you probably not.
I think you asked me about this guy, and I do not remember him. I know my parents do. I don't remember him.
Yeah. So, but the reason I bring it up is like, I hadn't heard that name in years and years and years, but immediately, like I was saddened that he had passed away. I guess he passed away in his sleep. They don't really know how. I hadn't heard the name in years. And he was a big dude. He had his tenor voice. He could sing. But he taught Sunday school. And some of my fondest early memories is like, he had this really cool thing that he would like come to kids camp, and he would do these crazy science experiments, and he would have a biblical message to them. I don't remember the biblical messages, but I remember one where he like took a big dill pickle and he connected it to electrodes, and like it started glowing, and the lights were down, and it blew up, and he had like this whole mad scientist thing.
Blew up a pickle?
Blew up a pickle. Yeah, blew up a pickle. Yeah, no, for sure. No, and I just, I go back and I just, he's with Jesus, he's in heaven. But you guys brought up Sunday school, and for all those that are out there that teach Sunday school, I heard that a Sunday school teacher of mine that I hadn't heard of in 30 years passed away, and I was immediately moved and filled with gratitude, and I made an impact in my life. I think of guys like Ward Kelly. I think of Polly Williams. I think of Rico Vaughn. I think of Dave Marini, people that I hadn't seen or talked to in years and years and years, but really made an impact in how I understand this. I'll never forget. We were at the church was over at 2nd Street, Stone Mountain. We were in what used to be my dad's office because we were out of space. Polly Williams was teaching our class. We were maybe 4th grade, and she did the whole Daniel chapter 2, the big statue, the tower, all the succession of empire. And I can remember that to this day. And just the impact that Sunday school teachers make. Every teacher makes an impact. Just specifically, though, you guys brought up Sunday school teachers, and that was kind of fresh on my mind. And I know, Vinny, you teach Sunday school, and you make an impact there. And that's something to be commended. Let's get to our topic tonight. If you, at any point, if there's any thoughts, feedbacks, questions, the official email address to the Outlaw Radio Show is popecrayton@gmail.com, popecrayton@gmail.com. We always appreciate feedback to those that are either listening or watching. So again, popecrayton@gmail.com. We're going to look at a few different passages of scripture. We're going to talk about a few things. We'll begin in Revelation. Let's see. We'll start in chapter 17. Let me give a little background into why I'm thinking about these things, like what brought this. We have kind of a production schedule of things that we have a long list of topics, that we'll filter in. And then a lot of times I'll be thinking about something on the treadmill, and it's like, nah, that's what we're going to do this week. And I was listening to a podcast. So there's two things. First, I've been reading a book about the pandemic and about a lot of the stuff going on behind the scenes regarding the pandemic, global planning, the involvement of massive think tanks, some of the things that took place were not so what maybe appeared off the cuff, but were very predetermined, thought through, implemented. We didn't have an erosion of civil liberties and a suspension of the Bill of Rights on accident. That was something that was literally game planned. In the event of a pandemic, how they were going to do this, the banning of social media accounts, disinformation campaigns, all of that was not off the cuff. It wasn't like there was a cabal of very powerful people that had been game planning these things as early as October of 2019. And I don't want to get too much into the conspiracy theory. These are documented things that have taken place. In this book that I'm reading, everything in it cited, like to the nth degree. I'm not trying to make any grand point, but like there's a global thing that is kind of behind the surface, and like what you might have seen, and you're thinking like, man, how did all this happen so fast? Well, there was a strategy behind it. It got implemented, and man, you just look at today, and Elon buying Twitter was a game changer because it gave a free speech platform. I sent you guys a video earlier of a guy that was on a Joe Rogan podcast where they were talking about psych ops. And he said the easiest tell for a psych op, the easiest way that you can tell that you're in one, something that's not real. And the psych op, it's like, it's a manufactured thing to convince you that reality is A when it's actually B. It's the best way I can describe it. You guys have a better definition, or is
that's it?
That about right? It's just a systematic way of trying to create a false reality that you're unaware that you're in.
Generally over a large population.
And one of the easiest ways is that, the word conspiracy theorist gets thrown around. Like almost immediately after JFK was assassinated, even like the official reports didn't make sense. And you had people asking serious questions, wanting to get to answers. And the CIA literally invented the phrase conspiracy theorist to anyone that was questioning the official narrative of the JFK assassination, because they didn't want the public to know. And even as of today, we don't even still know, while we have politicians saying that we will know. It was an early version of a psych op. One of the easiest ways that you know you're in a psych op is when any dissenting voice to the official narrative gets systematically branded as being false, or you're attempted to be silenced. And in the topic, like dealing with COVID, they're like, you had Harvard epidemiologists, like credible, lifelong disease specialists that are questioning the narrative and are being kicked off of boards, run out of organizations, their accounts removed on social media. It's like if you're ever in a situation where you're just asking questions of an official narrative and you get this overwhelming response systematically across all platforms that you're the crazy person, it often means that like the forces at play are trying to create a false reality to make you seem marginalized. Another example of this, I think, is often the global warming deal.
Or the moon landings.
Well, now you're getting funny. You can even get into like transgenderism. Like I think the whole trans movement, like you look at how fast, like it went from like nobody, like just a fringe thing to like almost within 2 or 3 years, we went from nothing to like, if you believed in two genders, you were the crazy person.
I absolutely believe that both transgenderism and a lot of the COVID stuff is, for lack of a better word, compliance testing to see.
Which is what a psyop is.
Right. It is who will be compliant to the narrative, who will not, and how do we deal with them when they're not. I absolutely agree with that.
So I've been reading a book, and I'm saying this to kind of explain why we're going to look at what we're looking at tonight. The other thing that I listened to a podcast that got me thinking along this thread, never considered this ever before. Isn't it crazy that for the recorded 6,000 to 7,000 years of human history, okay, across cultural divides, across continents, across ethnicities, civilizations, with no contact with each other, completely independent, separated, with no influence, no cross-pollination, whatever. The universal medium of money has always been what?
Gold.
Gold. Universally. Like from the Aztecs to the Chinese to the Babylonians or the Assyrians or the Egyptians, like across the world, the common mode of currency has always been gold, which is interesting because it's really not worth anything. Like it's not, you can't eat it, you can't burn it, you can't. It doesn't create energy, so it's not an energy source. It makes a very poor weapon. And it's the fact that what are you doing over here? Like you're a distraction when you're right next to me.
Sorry, you're getting into conspiracy theories, and I'm all about those.
He's talking about golden pyramids.
Golden pyramids. They
to transfer energy down to like
gold is a very good conducer of electricity.
But it doesn't. My point is, it doesn't. Right. I mean, we have electric guitar cables that are gold plated.
Right.
But I'm saying it doesn't like you can't
make.
It doesn't make energy.
No,
Right.
its best use is jewelry.
And so,
because it doesn't react to things.
So I was listening to this podcast talking about gold, and it's actually because of those very things that makes it a very good currency, because it's not dependent upon something. And it doesn't rust, it doesn't corrode, it's portable, it's divisible. Like you can make quantities of it for various values. Like gold, for whatever reason, is just universally been the currency. Like it's been what backs the currency, it becomes the currency. Well, you have, since Trump got elected, maybe the largest moving of gold across the world in history. Gold is being moved
From London.
systematically across the world and being consolidated in some very interesting places. And you get into it, like Saudi loves gold. America loves gold. Our debt's intertwined to gold. The reason that we don't like gold has a direct proportionality, like our ability to, because we can go dig for more gold, but oil has to be at a certain value to make gold exploration not cost effective. If you ended up with low cost of oil, then it would mean you could expend energy to get more gold. So you have to have this ecosystem and this balance of energy and gold, which is why, like, if we found an asteroid that was filled with gold, like gold can completely wreck your economy, which is why, like, apparently in the 60s with Nixon, like the French wanted their gold back. Like we've been the world holder of gold, and the French sent warships into New York to get their gold back in the late 60s. Germany wanted their gold, and I forget what the president said, if you want your gold, that's fine, but we're going to remove all of our troops out of Eastern Germany, and you can take on the Russians on your own. And Germany's never brought up the gold again. You have all this stuff happening in the Ukraine with Russia and NATO, and you're having huge movements of gold leaving Europe to come to America. The other theory is that if Trump actually does put a tariff on Europe, then gold will increase 25%, which will be completely destabilizing. Or if it goes up 25%, our holdings of gold could erase our debt overnight. Like, again, you have this fundamental like not a commodity, but it's
a resource.
It's a resource. This got me thinking. So I've had all these thoughts going through my brain. By the way, I also listened to a podcast about Bitcoin. That was fascinating because Bitcoin was supposed to be this way to break free of the dollar or all other currencies, but it was supposed to also be a mechanism for privacy, so that you could buy and sell privately without the government being able to track you or trace you. The early creators of Bitcoin were pushing, so that only works if you can spend Bitcoin. So they were pushing for you to be able to buy things online using Bitcoin. And they had contracts with like PayPal and Amazon where you could start taking your Bitcoin that's private, nobody knows how much you have, and you could buy things with it. And then the government got involved and shut that down. So now Bitcoin, because you can't buy and sell anywhere, it's worthless currency. Now it's a pure investment thing. And if you watch The Recruit, it's a show on, I think it's Netflix. It's a great show. But like the second season is all about in Japan, them using crypto and putting a tracer in it so that they could follow the money through organized criminal organizations that typically trade in cryptocurrency. Anyway, crypto thought, well, hey, that'll be, this big thing. It's now different. Gold, we still come back to gold. I only bring all this up. I know I'm kind of rambling. I'm sorry. So you get to Revelation chapter 17, and I guess I should read some of this because it's hard to summarize. We read, then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and talked with me. This is John, saying to me, come, I'll show you the judgments of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman riding on a scarlet beast, which was full of names and blasphemies, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornications. And on her forehead was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the bloods of the martyrs of Jesus. I saw her, I marveled with amazement. And then the rest of the chapter has some explanations of these things. Chapter 18, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority. He cried mightily with a loud voice, Babylon, the great is fallen, and has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison of every foul spirit, a cage for every unclean and hated bird. The nations have drunk the wine of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. The merchants of the earth have become rich to the abundance of her luxury. And I heard another voice saying, come, continues on, render her to what is due. And then you get to like the mystery, the world mourns the fall of Babylon. So there's been this great, like, what is Babylon? And there's two schools of thought, really. There is the one school of thought of like actually Babylon. That what we have here, why, like, so many will allegorize it or spiritualize it. Maybe it's like a literal thing. Like maybe Babylon actually reemerges. I'm old enough to remember, reports in the late 90s of Saddam Hussein actually actively rebuilding, doing excavations, rebuilding, having the dream of the emergence of the actual ancient city of Babylon, becoming an economic power for the Arab nations. Now, that didn't materialize. Saddam died. He was hung. Iraq is descended into chaos. A lot of the ancient stuff gets destroyed by ISIS. That never materialized. Now, is there a scenario where maybe that does? Or is like, Dubai, the more literal version of this economic mecca within the Middle East that becomes kind of a central figure in end times events, etc. Maybe this is a little thing. The challenge with that is the book of Revelation. One of the keys to understanding it is to realize that while it does speak a lot with symbols, there's tons of symbolism and it's overt. Like it's an obvious symbolism. The book of Revelation, there's nothing new introduced. There's no new symbols introduced in the book of Revelation. Actually, there's even no new ideas introduced in the book of Revelation. It is the end of the story. It's the culmination, the conclusion of all of these concepts introduced elsewhere. Like, where does the ultimate finality of the concept of sin come into? Well, it's the book of Revelation. Like, it's the ultimate rebellion of man against God and the conclusion of sin, where we get ushered into sinlessness. The whole idea of justification, redemption, salvation, the Jews as a people, the church, like all these concepts that are introduced throughout all of the Bible are finalized, concluded in the book of Revelation. Same with symbols. All these things, you don't define a symbol by just the book of Revelation. You look back to what would define the symbol earlier. And that's where Babylon becomes interesting, because there's a second view of it. Because Babylon is woven, this idea of Babylon is woven all throughout the scriptures, going all the way back to Genesis. And it is a physical thing, but it's also a spiritual thing. So yeah, there was Babylon. Babylon, under the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar, was God's instrument to destroy Jerusalem, Judah, the temple, to take the Jews into. They were God's instrument of judgment for his people. And they were living in Babylon, and Babylon was the heartbeat of the earth at the time. It was that first really superpower. The Egyptians were regional, Assyrians were regional, but Babylon reached a unique zenith of global dominance, never seen before. But that's not the introduction of the symbol. Like, so we can't just go back to Babylon looking at Nebuchadnezzar to try to gain some insight. You go all the way back to Genesis, which is, if Revelation is the end of the story, Genesis is the beginning, literally Genesis, the beginning of the story. And you have a few things that are happening. So you've got like 1,500 years of history that brings you all the way up to like chapter 6. A lot of history from Adam. The genealogy is bringing us all the way to Noah, like a totally crazy world. Pangea, probably one supercontinent, incredible advancements in technology. You can get into some of the Greek Orthodox ideas, sons of God, daughters of men, crazy things going on. Not relevant for today, other than it sets the stage for a global flood. God destroys the world. And then you get to chapter 10, after Noah. Noah and his sons are kind of resettling the earth. There's geological changes that have happened. You've got valleys, you've got mountains. You don't have this canopy of water vapor, which means that you no longer have human beings living long ages anymore, because of probably the exposure to UV radiation that you didn't have pre-flood. Mankind's instructed to eat meat, and is not just vegetarian. You have an ecological change to the planet. You have a new relationship of humanity and animals. Just again, all the ecosystems have changed. The pre-flood world's totally different. So you have Noah, his 3 sons, their wives, they're resettling. Chapter 10, you get a genealogy. We're not going to read the whole genealogy, other than the fact that you get to verse 8 and you're introduced to an interesting character. So we're told that Cush begot Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one on the earth. And that's within Hebrew language, loaded. He becomes this leader, kind of Nimrod, the first like global king, power, authority. He's a mighty man. We're told that he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom, this first mention of kingdom. So the beginning of Nimrod's kingdom was Babel. And then there's some other towns in the land of Shinar. And from that land, he went to Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Calah. So you got this man Nimrod, this mighty man, this hunter, this protector, this provider. And he institutes the first kingdom that we have on earth. And that kingdom is centralized. Mesopotamia, centralized, Euphrates River, centralized, first introduction of Babel. Now, we're also told that he goes up to another region. He also founds the city of Nineveh, which is an interesting thing in and of itself. That sets the stage. So you have Nimrod, this mighty hunter. This is the post-flood world. A lot of things happening. We read chapter 11, verse 1 again of Genesis, that the whole earth had one language and one speech, which would make sense. Like
one family.
One family. One group of descendants living in one general area, one kingdom. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar. They dwelt there. So this is explaining Nimrod, his leadership. This is the backstory of the establishment of this city of Babel. They said to one another, come, let us make bricks. Let's bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone. They had asphalt for mortar. They said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. But the Lord came down, saw the city, the tower which the men had built. And the Lord said, indeed, the people are one. They have one language. This is what they begin to do. Now, nothing that they have proposed to do will be withheld. Come, let us go down, confuse their language, that they may not understand each other's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. They ceased building the city. Therefore, the name it's called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of all the earth. From there, the Lord scattered them from abroad over the earth. So Noah, his sons, were given the instruction, scatter. And that was an important thing, because at the time you had continental shifts beginning because of the flood, and humanity needed to scatter to get onto other continents. That's why we had other nations, other parts of the earth, because of the land bridges that existed then before continents got too far apart. So they needed to scatter. But what did they do? They have a leader several generations in. His name's Nimrod. And under his leadership, they're like, let's build this city. Let's build this city with a tower. Let's build the tower out of stone. Let's cover it in asphalt, which makes it waterproof. Let's make it a tower up into the sky. One language, one people, one city, in defiance of God. They wanted to hedge themselves against another judgment. God sees this. They're being disobedient. They're not scattering and filling the earth. They've unified together. Sinful synergy. It's what happened before the flood. It's what would happen afterwards. Best way I can deal with humanity is I'm going to scatter them. I'm going to pick out one family, which is what happens in chapter 12. It's Abram. I'm going to work redemption through that family, bringing a savior for the whole world. So it was important for them to be scattered. Now, Babel, the image of Babel and Babylon, is this unification of sinful humanity in defiance of God, without the need of God. Humanism, so to speak. And there is the unification of it, which is why you get to the book of Revelation, Babylon has fallen. It's this one world system that grew, developed, the Antichrist rode upon, that was in defiance of God, and it has fallen. Now, Babel, one world, God, like what is the unification? So Babel was introduced, they had one language. So God confused the languages to separate them. And we're told that they separate because they couldn't understand each other. And for a good 6,000 years, that was pretty effective. You know, we couldn't communicate. We stayed separate. Yes, we might have traded with one another, but there was a homogeny in regards to the separation of cultures, ethnicities. We might have gotten along, traded, bartered, had treaties, but we spoke different languages. Well,
we didn't have mass intermixing.
Correct. Now, we've always kind of thought that like the reemergence of okay, so Babel is this global unification. And yes, okay, that's true. You could say that it's language. Because we do all have like a global language. Now, even if you want to set like English aside, the global language is the internet. And we can extrapolate that out, that AI becomes even more of a universal force. That's a whole nother topic that interlays into it. But what's interesting, and this was kind of the thought process, is that ultimately what unifies the world?
Gold.
It's gold. It's money. It's money. In fact, there was a very interesting. So we left World War II. Russia USSR, United States, divided everything up. We entered the Cold War. Soon after, Russia becomes a nuclear power, and that exacerbates the Cold War, makes things way more complicated because we're talking like global annihilation with nuclear weapons. And so there was like, how do we fix that problem? And there was a lot of thought experiments in the 60s and the 70s about like, how can we avoid nuclear war? Like the apocalypse. Like one of the theories was like, well, if we had like a computer system, it was a thought experiment. If we had a computer system that was giving control of all of the world, maybe not all of the world's nuclear weapons, but like enough of them, that it would like guaranteed mutually assured destruction. And like there was a movie called War Games, like I think an 80s movie that was based on this idea because the computer decided to do its own thing, you know? It became dangerous. But the idea is like, well, if Russia tries to launch a sneak attack, this computer system will read it, missiles will get launched back, it's done. One of the other theories, well, let's just give everybody nuclear weapons, you know, like more nuclear powers, let's spread this out, and then, you know, you might hit America, but you're going to get hit from France and Germany, or, you know, from the little titan in North Korea, China. India becomes a nuclear. Pakistan becomes a nuclear. How do you deal with Pakistan? Because you make India mutually assured destruction. All of that, all of those remedies included global destruction, right?
Horrible ideas.
Which was so there was a book written. I forget the name of the book. I'll have to go back and look. But there was an economist that presented a different solution. And his solution was, if we can tether all the world economies into each other, you would assure mutually assured destruction, not in an apocalyptic style, but in an economic collapse. So like the Soviet Union can't take down America because if the American economy goes down, it sets off a chain reaction that everyone goes down as a result of it. America can't attack Russia because the same thing would happen. It would influence, like if you can intertwine all the global markets, then
if anybody goes to war, everybody dies.
Right. And the only places that you can have war are like in Africa or certain parts of the Middle East that aren't really tethered to the global economy. In fact, like you can make the justifications Afghanistan was about the global economy because we just took over the opium trade. I mean, opium sales went through the roof when we took over. Iraq with oil. Like, I mean, there's always a money angle to everything. COVID, vaccines, the pandemic response. There is a reason that the top 1% of the world's wealthiest people gained $3 trillion in wealth through the lockdowns, while the middle class of America lost $3 trillion in wealth. That's not an accident. It's about money. Money, money, money.
The love of money is the root of all evil.
So here's my thing. So we are in this season where like, so throughout my teen years, college years, 30s, man, we were looking at real possibilities of like a physical one world government. Like the move to globalism, the move to the United Nations, the move to the EU, to NATO, like our institutions ceding power to like the World Health Organization, like these intercontinental treaties, like the erosion of our own constitutional rights to an international body. Like we have seen throughout my adult life a movement physically to like a consolidation of power.
I think not just that, but like lack of a better term, a psyop. You know, all the cartoons from back in like the 80s, like Captain Planet. It was all about the planet being a good world citizen.
Yes, for sure.
Rather than being an American, like you got to save the planet, not just I got to save my section of America kind of thing. It was all about being a world citizen rather than a
and because of like following World War II, the term nationalism was given a dirty connotation because of Nazism. So like, again, even in our recent time period, you know, people that are like, well, make America great again, or the America First agenda, like the belief in like country first. Well, you're a racist, you're a bigot, like all of these terminology. Why? Because there has been this push within the elites, the money people, for the consolidation of power and a centralized authority, which we would call Babylon the Great. Like this one world system, one language, one people, one world. Now, what's interesting to that is that Trump's reelection, like, not only do we see this complete fight back to the psyop, but you see people that are like, oh, I'm not down with the global citizen thing, the open borders thing. Like, I believe in my country. I believe that it's okay to be an American, to have my own land, to have my own country, to have my own people, to have my own culture. And I'm okay with you having your own people, your own culture, your own thing somewhere else. And you know what? Yeah, America should repent from going around the world trying to impose democracy on countries that fundamentally aren't democratic. Like, again, I watched another interview with a guy from Saudi Arabia and talking about the kingdom. He's a billionaire. He runs the Saudi Wealth Fund or whatever. And he's like, he gets asked by this Westerner about the monarch. And he goes, you know what? Like, we're totally cool with the monarch. Like, we look at your democracy and you have all kinds of problems. Like, we have great quality of life. We've got health care. We've got, like, we love our king.
More billionaires than anybody else in the world.
Like, you know what?
Also more slaves than just about anybody in the world.
Probably. Yeah, no, for sure.
feudalism.
But how many slaves are in America to Capital One?
Right.
Like, we just define slavery different.
Yeah.
You know, and the deal was like, but again, like America's had this thing, like, we've tried to impose our way of living onto other cultures. And we've gotten a reaction to that. And now, like, it's okay to be a nationalist. Like, to be like, hey, love of country. Like, there's a whole, like, God, family, country. And that used to kind of have, like, this own weird stigma, like 6 or 7 years ago, 8 or 10 years ago. It's different now. And not only are we seeing this in America, but you're seeing this, like, across the world. You're seeing nationalistic movements in Italy, France, the UK, although the UK is crazy and kind of messed up. It's always been that way in Japan. Japan's its own thing. Korea's its own thing. Like, they don't bring in other people groups.
That's actually what's fascinating about the move to nationalism and the reaction to it, is that the non-white countries have always been nationalistic. Like Japan and Korea,
right.
Taiwan, most of the African countries.
The Arab countries
are very nationalistic. They're very, very, like, what's the word that I'm looking for? Identify in who they are as identified by where they were born.
Yeah, it's
very big deal.
If you go to any country, like, say I were to move to another country, like, take someplace in Africa like Kenya or something, I will never be Kenyan.
Never.
Ever.
And it's not because of your skin color. It doesn't help.
It doesn't. Right.
But it's not because it's because you're not Kenyan.
I'm not Kenyan. Like, and it does deal with skin color and ethnicity and stuff like that. We are one of the few countries in this world where we're multi-ethnic and multicultural at the same time as having, or used to be, one national identity with multiple cultures. And that's been the weird,
I think that's one of the best
transition
parts
kind of
about
thing.
America.
Yeah.
And I think that it went overboard in the last, like, 4 years.
Well, yes and no. So, like, what was beautiful about America was that we let you, like, we had defined what America was. Like, very, very much so. Like, language, religion, like, we had an American culture, American language, American ideals, which was pluralistic. Like there were tenets to what America was. And if you moved here, what was an American was the color of your skin.
Right.
But you assimilated into American society. So first generation might have maintained their own identity, like, the Italians.
Hey, those Italians.
But like by second generation, they know the language. By third, they're fully assimilated. And you see that across ethnic borders. The only group of people that don't do that very well are the Muslims. And you can even make kind of an argument to an extent with certain Jewish populations as well. Also the Koreans don't. There are other groups that don't assimilate. My point, and this is kind of where I'm going with the conversation, because you can go a lot of different directions here. So I'm looking at things as they're going on, because it would be easy to have the reaction of saying, well, wow, this whole globalism thing, Babylon the Great, like, man, we kind of feel like maybe we reversed 20 years off of this process. Like, and in some ways, like if Trump's fully successful, if this really kind of moves the trajectory that it is, I mean, we might be back 100 years from where we thought like a one world emerging government would look like, right?
Off the doomsday clock.
But that's only if you're evaluating Babylon the Great under the pretext of unification by government, by centralized government. If you see Babylon the Great as unification via language and money, well, language is going to get, over the next several years with AI, it's going to be universal. The universal language is code, not speech. 2, even the things that Trump's doing monetarily, it strengthens the overall global economy. And so, like, it's kind of like the switcheroo where, you might, as a Christian, and this is kind of where I'm getting to as a Christian, it might be like, oh, well, I really felt like we were getting real close, but now I'm kind of looking at it and it's like, all right, we got some time. I'm saying, like, hold your horses for a moment, because you're defining Babylon in one way, which it could be. But I'm saying, like, if you really look at what collectivism is, you can have different governments, but they're all the same if it's all the same money. And again, with the introduction of AI and technological control, that becomes a whole nother thing. And then if Trump's successful with peace, remember, a pretense to the rapture of the church is they'll be saying peace in our day. It won't be war. It'll be peace, because it'll be as a thief in the night. So that's my exhortation to Christians, is like my prophecy update, right?
Wouldn't the rapture of the church also be a pretense to the fall of Babylon?
Well, it's just,
you basically have a massive exit of people from the economy and the world at large.
Maybe massive. We'll see.
Well, I mean, that's going to throw.
Remember, I'm the pessimist here. I think it might not be as
okay.
Massive
Bare
as
minimum, if 30,000, 40,000 people just disappear with no knowledge.
Well, let's get like bigger than that. Several million
like disappear from America. Nobody's going to blink.
What I'm saying is, if people just
that happened in COVID
all at once,
no,
right? But if a large amount of people
they were over the age of 80,
that's going to send the economy and the world at whole into chaos.
Oh, listen! The trajectory of all that ends with the fall of Babylon. Right. Ultimately, is Jesus destroying it.
Yeah.
And cracking the Mount of Olives in half.
Yeah, and in the process, here's the other thing. We know that there's an economic element to Babylon, because part of the persecution of the Christians, that the people that get saved during the tribulational period, is that they're not allowed, like somehow related to the mark of the beast, is the ability to engage in the global economy, to be able to buy and sell, and they're not allowed to. So we know that there is there is an economic component to that, and my only point was, like, I kind of learned with some of the influences, some of the things I've been reading, that, man, the world is way more intertwined in ways that we might not at first glance think about, because we are in a bit of a nationalistic feel at the moment, independent, nationalistic, are self-identifying, but like, don't let that deceive you to the reality that like even Trump realizes it's a global economy, like absolutely, completely tethered. It's why like I go back to, and Vinny, you were in a similar place with me, but like, I'll never forget that the crash of 08 and 09, like what ended up precipitating Bush over like this weekend meeting coming out and saying like, hey, we've got to bail out the banks, was that Greece had defaulted. It was the Grecian,
like the country of Greece.
The country of Greece, which basically has the economy of like West Texas, maybe. Mm-hmm. Like Oklahoma. But they defaulted. They couldn't pay their debt. They literally defaulted. And that set Greece defaulting. Their monetary policy set off a chain reaction that the banks across the world began to collapse because all the debt was being called on. And it got to America and it's like, oh, well, we now have a big problem. And like Bush was like, we have to do this, not just to avoid an economic collapse in America, but it was like a global collapse. And I remember even then thinking, wait a second, like that's sketchy. That what happens in the banks in Greece, like that's dangerous. And then it's like, oh, but that's intentional. That's intentional. And I think that's what Babylon, the spirit of Babylon, ultimately represents. And it's not so much this nationalistic or global, the one world government, which is a phrase that, gets thrown around. It's something actually more sinister, because it's really like where your treasure is, there's your heart. And what is the heart of the world? It's about money. Like greed, money, wealth is the driver of everything. And I just thought that was worth talking about tonight. Any final thoughts, you guys?
I thought that was very interesting. I really enjoyed it. I like the idea of Babylon the Great being a financial system as opposed to being a political system. And those two things are obviously intertwined. But I really like that because I am the pessimist, and I see a lot of stuff on Facebook of people like, we're taking back our country and things are getting better. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. Or things are getting worse as they always do. And you just don't realize how they're getting worse yet.
Well, going back, tying some threads together. So the psyop thing, in financial institutions, like in the financial world. Yeah.
It's psyop, not psych-op.
Psyop.
Thank you.
I've been thinking
whatever.
It's been bothering me the whole time, so I had to say something.
Psyop. Whatever. You know what I'm saying. It's also about gold. Like if you talk a lot about gold, you're viewed as a wingnut. Mm-hmm. Not to mention that like Warren Buffett has huge gold reserves he won't talk about. Or like the Saudi National Fund, like he was asked about gold. He goes, yeah, we have gold. And like completely would not talk about it. Like they don't, like the big players don't talk about gold. And then subsequently they push into the media that if you're a gold guy, like you're a 1850s prospector, like
yeah, you're an 1850s prospector, or you're Ron Swanson bearing gold under trees,
right? Gold bullion.
Yeah,
it's like how many Robert Duvang commercials can I see on Fox News about buying gold and silver?
Right?
Which I think is very interesting. Here's another wrinkle. This is just fun thought. So what's one of the first things? So Moses leads the children of Israel out of Egypt, right? They're in the wilderness. They get to Mount Sinai. And he gives them instructions to build the tabernacle. And what do the people do? Like, so what's the main metal that's used all throughout the tabernacle?
AU.
That's the chemical symbol for gold.
Gold.
I thought I'd get Creighton.
Like everything.
I got you, bud.
Everything is built in gold.
Comes from the word aurum, which is the Latin word for gold.
So it's all built in gold. Like, and you go back and you read about the artifacts, like the golden menorah, the solid gold.
They've already rebuilt that.
I've seen it. Mm-hmm. Temple Institute in Jerusalem. Yep. They did one. Solomon's temple had like 10 of them.
No, they got more. They got everything rebuilt.
But I thought they only had one menorah. It's just the one you see?
Yeah.
The one on display. So, like, again, I think it's interesting that, like, what's one of the first things that God does for Israel? Because how did they get the gold to build all this? Well, that's what Aaron did. They brought all of their jewelry, all of the gold that they had.
Not just that, but the Egyptians gave it to them before leaving.
Right. They took all of the gold and they melted it down to build the calf. Well, they did the calf, but then that got destroyed and ground up and spread out into the sand. Mm-hmm. But they took all of the gold and they built all the artifacts within the tabernacle. Like the value. Like, it's interesting. Like, if you think about it, though, what did God indirectly do? He created a central bank. Like the tabernacle itself was the currency reserve for Israel. It's the gold. Like, it's what the currency would be. Like, it's like it had value because they had a stock. It's like why we have Fort Knox. Like, there's a stockpile of gold and it creates a value that all of your gold now can be bought and sold based off of. Which, again, I think is a really interesting.
That is a very interesting idea.
You know, that God created a gold reserve in the building of his house. And it was in the center of the people because it was supposed to be protected. Protect the bank. Right. Huh. Again, these are just fun thoughts about, like, just listening to gold, which is why then, you know, they hid a bunch of it when Babylon was coming on the march. And could the gold reserves still be under the Temple Mount someplace? You know, et cetera, et cetera. There's all kinds of fun theories. Could they discover the gold under the Temple Mount and it wrecked the global economy because of the amount of gold that exists there?
Wreck the global economy and prove that Jerusalem has always been a Jewish city?
Could it be pretense for why Russia wants to go into Jerusalem? Why they want to invade Israel? It's because of the discovery of this massive gold reservoir? And their economy needs it? I'm just saying, like, it's like you start thinking about gold and then you start thinking about the Bible and how often the Bible talks about gold and where the Bible places gold and its importance. And I don't know. It was an itch I wanted to scratch tonight. So, Vinny, you got any final thoughts?
It's just, I mean, I've been listening the whole time and it's just weird, like, seeing the importance of gold throughout the Bible and all that. And then looking back at history, like all the gold rushes that we've had. And then now it's just kind of like nobody's looking for gold. Like, why? Like, why did we just quit looking for gold for the last 100 years?
Well, because we became an oil economy, and the amount of energy that you would have to expend to dig for gold
doesn't offset properly.
Wouldn't offset. It doesn't make sense, which is why they've always had to keep energy costs at a certain place, because if they didn't, well, then you would like cost benefit analysis. Well, let's go dig for gold. But then that makes the gold that we have worth less. And then that becomes a problem, which is like if an asteroid filled with gold hit the planet, the global economy would wreck. Gold. Like, it's you know why we ended up leaving the gold standard? We didn't have enough gold to cover our debt. We defaulted. That's why Nixon abandoned the gold standard, because we couldn't run our debt no longer matched the gold we had to back it up. So they had to detach the dollar from gold so that they could print dollars, and dollars just had their own inherent value now, unconnected to gold, but gold still ends up being the basis of debt.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, which is again really, really interesting. Again, if you'd like to say we're crazy and that this was a dumb topic, we should talk about something else. Again, the official email address of the Outlaw Radio Show is popecrayton@gmail.com, popecrayton@gmail.com. Justin, hit me some music. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on the Outlaw Radio Show. If you are watching live, check out the podcast, which you've been watching. It gets released in audio form, Apple, Google, Spotify. Released on all those formats, those platforms. Like it, share it, pass it along to your social media community. If you're listening on the podcast, check out the live stream. Join us live. We live stream on 3 different platforms. We live stream on YouTube. outlawradio.live is the quick link to our YouTube channel. We stream on facebook.com/The Radio Outlaw. And then we also stream via my X account, which is x.com/Zach_Adams. And so you can find us there. God bless. See you guys next week.